Okay, my name is Matt Heldstab. I am a systems administrator with the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and this is...
I am Nigel Hickey. I am the VMUG leader from Houston, Texas. Go barbecue. And I am a consulting engineer with Sigma Solutions out of San Antonio.
So we're going to do a little presentation on supporting your VDI solution, how to get buy-in and operational support. So this isn't going to all be a session on how to configure your VDI, but it's going to be kind of how you take the people that are responsible for this different tiers of support and you get them to buy into your solution and help you support it. Because even though VDI is something that typically a lot of server administrators take care of, a little show of hands, how many desktop engineers are in here? 0. Yeah. So yeah, well, you're not a desktop engineer, a virtual desktop engineer. But so the thing is, the challenge can be that we're doing a lot of things. We wear a lot of hats. So we have to get set up in a situation so the people that actually support the desktops that are technically losing a little bit of their control are brought back into the realm so that they can help out, because you're going to need it. Because you don't want to do it yourself. Yeah, absolutely. I should do this when I talk.
Check.
Okay, as I said, I'm Matt. This is Nigel, and did I hit a button that's not right? It disappeared on me.
So that's it.
It's just slow. Yeah. Okay. Well, a little bit of background. I grew up in the Chicago area, from western Wisconsin, and I work in Minnesota. So I figure there's a little bit of something for everybody to love and everybody to hate. So, but worked in higher ed for 16 years and in SLED space for about 20. My first taste of server was in 2006. We had Network 6 in-house, and we migrated everything to SUSE Enterprise Server 9 on vSphere. Or not vSphere, it was just ESX 3 at the time. And then in 2009, we had a CTO type that decided, hey, why not do VDI? Have you ever heard of it before? 2009, who would have said yes? Not very many people. So we went ahead and decided to go with that, and we've been using it ever since. I'm also a VMUG leader in North Central Wisconsin and Minneapolis. And Nigel, you can talk about yourself for a sec.
I'll hold this microphone.
Okay.
So who am I? I grew up outside Chicago as well. Didn't stay very long, but moved out to New Jersey where I gained my street cred, I guess you would say. So yeah, I worked for a bunch of companies. We've got some big names up there. I like to put the NSA up there because it's kind of goofy, right? So we used to call ourselves NSA, but we're National Specialty Alloys. Recently just moved into a consulting role, and 3-time vExpert, a couple of certifications. First VMware that I got into in 2011 was on vSphere 4, and we used a call recording software called Telrex for recording short tail phone systems. So someone said, hey, can you do this? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I had no idea what I was doing. Jumped in there, figured it out. It worked. Surprise, it's awesome. So it was good. Then the next thing, I jumped into another job and then said, yeah, we should do this EUC, VMware View thing. This whole terminal server thing's not working out. What do you think? Okay, here's some money. I'm like, oh, great. Now I don't know what I'm doing. So I jumped in there, installed all that stuff, and then I went to class and got certified after that. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
All right. So what we're going to do is we have some topics to cover. We're going to talk about stack support. Supporting VDI takes a village or a village of talents. Pilot versus production. It's not all about the solution itself. Use cases, that's actually how you're going to be able to expand your VDI environment by coming up with new use cases. Maintenance, who, what, when, and why. Best practices is something that we are going to go through technical components and aspects of deploying VDI, because in the end, if your best practices aren't in line with the way they should be, your support's going to be hit pretty hard. Automation, there's a lot of good ways to take your lower tiered engineers and give them tasks that are already automated so that they can turn into an operator that performs tasks engineers would normally do. And then finding passionate folks to help you with your solution. Okay. So, types of talents required to deploy a virtual desktop infrastructure or maintain one. You're going to need somebody that's got hypervisor talents. So you pretty much have a VMware admin that takes care of the hypervisor. Pretty much your server virtualization folks are the ones that are going to be responsible for that. Typically, if you've done a VDI, that person has always been involved, so that's nothing new. Network, firewall, LAN, and storage networking are going to be involved. Configuring quality of service for PC over IP, a best practice that Nigel will cover later. You need somebody that can manage your SAN fabric. You're going to need somebody that has load balancer talents if you're going to have a highly available VDI deployment. So if you don't have load balancers in-house and you want to scale past, I don't know, say 50 users and have resiliency built in, you're going to need that. You're going to need someone to manage your compute and your storage.
Or you could do it all yourself.
Right. Yeah, these aren't necessarily the same person or different people, but we all wear a lot of hats.
I may not have done that myself.
Active Directory is really important. Somebody that can handle group policy, DFS to host your persona files, DHCP management, because you don't want to just shoot out 300 desktops in a pool with this Class C, and then you run out of IP addresses, and then all of your desktops won't come up. You need somebody to be able to manage the VDI applications, so your connection broker, handle your remote protocols, and something that a lot of people don't think about, managing your SSL certificates, which is pretty crappy at times in a View environment, especially if you're using NetScalers instead of F5s. And you got to do it on all the hosts. But anyway, I digress, like we are. Desktop management, so the applications themselves, this is something that your Tier 2 help desk that I'm going to cover a little bit later can help you with. Somebody that understands Windows, understands the operating system, perhaps understands antivirus, or maybe you offload it using vShield endpoint. And then you're layering technologies, and there's a lot of people here, app volumes, people have talked about that. Liquid Labs has a good layering solution. So if you guys have been able to see a lot of really cool technologies around that here, there's been some good breakouts. Hopefully you guys found them useful. So depending on who you have for your support, different types of VDI deployments could benefit you in a proof of concept environment. So if you're consistently deploying just typical desktops with no folder redirection, and you want to try VDI on for size, you can do persistent full clones, and you can actually manage them with SCCM and do your passing with Windows Update and all of your update strategies. Or you can change that around and do non-persistent full or link clones. The most difficult one to manage is the non-persistent link clones, where you usually need a third-party persona management. But it is a very good solution if you're worried about disaster recovery or backing up the user's persona, because this has happened to us in the past. Back when we were using persistent data disks with persistent desktops, a lot of our users said, well, it's a VDI, of course you're backing it up, right? Well, not necessarily. It's a desktop, but they didn't think of it as a desktop. They thought it was a server application. And so there's a little bit of education you have to do with your users there.
Yeah, so definitely can be complicated. So make sure, when you're designing those things that you're building out that team that's going to help you, because if not, you're going to be kind of pigeonholing yourself almost and stuck into that role. So
Pelican-holing yourself.
Yeah.
That was a really bad joke. Okay, so why would we want to do this? Why would we want to take all these complicated things and do a VDI solution? Well, it's really all about workforce mobility nirvana, being able to work from anywhere. Somebody said that they thought that was Kyle, actually. That was you, that's right, that was you.
That looks like Kyle. I'm not looking up.
I guess Kyle and I could we have kind of the same look on it. Yeah, so I mean, you can literally work from anywhere. It's pretty cool. Remember though, free is not always free. When we first did our VDI deployment, interesting story. Anybody ever heard of a software called Desire to Learn out here? Yeah, so you guys are all MinSQ people, or you went to a MinSQ school, because that's our online learning system. And so we had a Desire to Learn conference in 2008. And we had a lot of Unix people that thought it'd be an awesome idea to do Sunrays with SRSS. So it's like a Unix Java desktop-based endpoint. And the whole conference in the lab was all using Java Desktop with Firefox, and that was their lab. And so our CTO type at the time said, hey, we got all of these Sunrays, 100 of them, and all of these x86 Sunfire servers. You ever heard of VDI? Let's do it. So, but the problem with that was that we said, yeah, let's do it, until we realized how complicated it really was deploying VDI with Sunrays. Anybody ever deployed it with Sunrays before or worked with Sunrays? Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So this was one of our first flowcharts in VDI in 2011, and you can see how complicated it was. The problem with Sunrays is they call them thin clients, but they're stateless like zero clients. So Sunrays actually require a Solaris failover group farm of Solaris servers that you have to maintain that actually act as a connection broker to allow you to get your Sunray to your connection broker and get to your virtual desktop. And if you notice at the upper left-hand corner, E directory, so yeah, we did this on Novell. So I think there are like 2 or 3 people in the world that even tried this maybe. Because, well, 5 or 6 people were running Novell in 2011, right?
Yeah. You were sure.
That was, yeah. So just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. So then what happened was Oracle bought Sun about a year after we decided to deploy these. Oracle bought Sun, and they refused to support PC over IP as a protocol. They only did RDP. So View 4 came out. We talked to Oracle. Why don't you give us PC over IP? Nothing. Crickets. 4.5 came out. Crickets. 4.6 came out. Forget it. We were done with them. So, yeah, and then in 2013, after we left them, they actually killed Sunrays. So it was the writing was on the wall. It was pretty obvious. So just the moral of the story is make sure that you choose a solution that isn't necessarily a cost-effective solution. Make sure you look to the future and pick a solution that is really stable. Dell is here, and we've been using Dell Wise Terminal P20s and P25s, the Terra 1 and Terra 2 processors for a while, and they are very, very solid. Any other Wise people in here?
HPs? Anyone?
They're the same thing.
Yeah, they're good.
Except for the HPs we tested out were so hot that I could have kept my coffee warm all day.
No, we had T510s, worked fine. No heaters involved.
Well, that's good. That's good. All right. Another thing you can do is you can simplify your solution. There's a lot of vendors here that do a good job of that. Tintree and SolidFire, for example, you can simplify your management of your storage solution, not have to necessarily do all the tweaks that you would normally do at a storage platform. Quality of service is also something that's really important. You can offload your antivirus, so you don't have to worry about maintaining all the agents inside all the virtual machines. And if you would like, you can use an HCI solution, SimpliVity, Nutanix, vSAN, and others. And this document here, if any of you guys are subscribing to Gartner, it's a really cool document. It's about 18 months old, but a lot of the things on how to deploy and staff a virtual desktop infrastructure are in that document. So for all of you Gartner subscribers out there, and they did not sponsor this, so. All right, pilot versus production. How are we doing for time? Pretty good. Okay, it's not all about the solution, so it needs to go a lot faster. First level support. So your typical help desk people that do the break fix on the PCs, you can actually repurpose those people to take care of your fat clients that have Windows installed on them. You can also have them deploy your Wise terminals and make sure the firmware is updated on those if you're using Zero clients, or if the operating system is up to date on them if you're using thin clients. That's a really good way to get those people that think that their jobs are being taken away from them and get them engaged so that they'll then want to eventually become second level support people that maybe can do the...
Kind of gets over the fear a little bit, because some of them are like, oh, it's virtual, I don't want to touch it, I'm not a VMware guy, so you kind of bring them back in, It's not that different.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of your desktop support folks, you give them a full clone desktop to support, and they panic. They're like, it's a virtual desktop. I mean, treat it like it's physical. Treat it like it's real. And that's really all you got to tell them, and eventually they get over that fear. Second level support, they can do the patching, depending on whether or not it's full clone versus link clone. And these are the people that are going to interface with what I call the pool owner. So at times you may have a virtual desktop pool of desktops that may be a little bit different for a specific use case. I'll get into that in the next slide. Third level support is your vSphere and VDI admins, which we all are. And communication is key across all levels too. So make sure that if you decide to patch your VDI environment, you need a view agent installed, the second tier people install the view agent and the parent, and it just trickles down like that. SSL certificates, make sure they get them on the Wise terminals, things like that. Pool owners can be critically important. For example, software developers. Developers love to use their tools. They've got their PC with their tools and their version, and they love them, and that's about it. Their managers hate that because then they've got all these developers with different tools and are at the same version, and one person develops one way, another person develops another way. VDI will allow them to standardize all their tool sets, and it really helps out a lot. So if you have a manager that is willing to approve all tools you put in the pool, that's a great way to go about doing things.
Yeah, don't ask the developers what they want. They're not sure.
Yeah, don't ask the developers what they want.
Everything.
Well, they'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
Yeah, they're not sure.
Yep. Okay. Use cases. How do we discover where VDI fits? This is where you're going to be able to grow your environment. These are a lot of them are pretty basic. Primary computing option, secure remote access, shared workstations. For us, we have an ERP system that's homegrown, and so all of our developers have their tools inside here. Browser testing is a really neat thing. Our web applications, they love being able to have thin apps for each version of Internet Explorer so they can test each version. And dedicated training labs, mobile training labs, campus computing environments, secure online banking, or kiosk computers, or digital signage computers. I'll let Nigel talk a little more about that.
Cool. So kiosks, I had a chance to do some kiosks at the last position I was in. Another great design or use case, I would say, we had warehouse workers in a steel shop that still need to do their HR documentation. They still need to do their benefits. So we built some kiosks around the office, one in the shop, a couple in the lunchroom, places they could just show up real quick, go ahead and do their stuff. When they log off, deletes the desktop, refreshes, builds a new desktop, and away they go. Kind of similar to what you're doing at hotels when you print out your boarding passes and stuff. So it was a nice little use case. We did about 4 of them, but it was definitely useful. So then we're going to get into maintenance. And why should we do maintenance? So identifying who's responsible for the aspects of the maintenance, as well as keeping in mind that we want to, keep those people engaged. And when you're doing things and testing out new pools or testing new settings for pools, that you want to follow those folks or have those folks follow you, so you're not stepping on toes that way. So just kind of the big thing is breaking down those barriers. A lot of places I've seen either worked or worked with, there's those silos, like storage doesn't talk to this person, desktop support doesn't talk to this person, the guy that does the patching, only comes in on Saturday, he doesn't know, so those breaking down the barriers, making sure that everyone's in the same, realm or calendar. Especially going back to SSL, so make sure those things, that's like the big nightmare, right? SSLs in Vue are sometimes getting better, sometimes getting better. Application approval hierarchy. So those things come up in the school systems, I believe. Smaller companies, we kind of just do things, but if you have those, make sure that those people are getting in on that scope, right? So they want to know what's happening and why, and get their approvals. So
it's back to your pool owners, especially.
Right.
So if there's an approval process for that.
Then we'll jump into some best practices here. So I think I have okay. Yeah, I guess. So the blame game, right? So going back to what we said before, the fear. Like, I've worked at places, folks are just afraid. They're like, I'm not the virtual guy, I'm the desktop guy. I'm going to go fix some printers. Yes, we love you for fixing printers, because do we like printers? No. So, but it's okay to learn and stop, making it a blame game or a fear. I think that's the biggest thing on the customer side I've ever seen, is just the fear of people not wanting to change or learn. So I'll run through some of these here. So keeping your host at the same version and build, these are important aspects from the host side. Staying up to date on your BIOS and firmwares, of course, before you're patching and going forward to like ESS 6 or anything like that. Being aware of your capacity constraints and overhead for the host, as well as how many VMs. You're starting with 10, you're going to grow to 500 or so forth. You want to make sure you're planning correctly for that. Some folks use host profiles. Host profiles are good for keeping those same configurations and passing those across to your other hosts. So same as on the vSphere world, same for the Vue world. Connection servers, standard stuff, configuring them with basic needs of 10 gigs of RAM, usually for about 2,000 users is what VMware recommends. 4 vCPUs recommended. Don't go crazy on vCPUs. Can get you in trouble later on. Separating internal and external connection servers. So if you have folks that are connecting externally and folks that are connecting internally, try not to use those connection servers for the same purpose. It's going to give you a better experience. One pair for internal, one pair for external. Same on the security server. Security server is basically same as your connection server, so same requirements there. Security servers, about 700 is what VMware also says for connections per instance, and then you're having to scale out from there. So keep those in mind when you're scaling. If you're getting into a larger scale, sometimes the F5 or the NetScaler stuff is your friend to use those load balancers instead of the connections, or excuse me, the security servers. You're also going to free up a license. If you move into like an F5, you can get rid of your Windows licensing for those security servers, which is all nice because we all love Windows licensing, right? So, also keep in mind the Blast secure gateway for HTML access for Vue can handle about 350 connections per security server. If you're going outside of that, you'll need to make sure you plan for scale. RDSH servers. Obviously, running multiple servers is better than one large VM. Some people will make a really large VM, a lot of capacity, and then leave that out there. You have one point of failure, or you have a huge bloated VM that's taking up some storage space and not really performing as best as possible. And understanding your desktop sessions, what people are connecting to, the amount of apps that they're using per session, and there's some scaling guides that VMware has for optimization. The scaling guide you can find online usually. The the Horizon 6 optimization tool is kind of like a registry hack that they have that you can run. It's a little weird when you run it. It doesn't actually tell you what it's doing. It just does all this stuff. You can use a couple of the logs to see what it's doing afterwards. It's not ideal, but it's good. It turns off some things with Office and some settings for when you're setting up your name and your initials in Office and all that, kind of sets all those defaults so the user doesn't have to answer all those questions. So it kind of optimizes that. So,
anybody running Windows 10 yet? The optimization fling actually has been, and actually you'd be interested to know, Jack McMichael, who is in that Lunch and Learn, is the lead engineer for the optimization fling. So he was actually here, and they just released.
And it's approved now, right?
Yeah, so it's technically beta for Windows 10, but it was released, I think, in mid-February. So if you're looking at optimizing Windows 10, that's ready to go.
Awesome. Right in time for Windows 11.
There is no Windows 11 ever.
It's coming. It's coming soon. So PC over IP, this is going to go back to your networking team. So prioritization of traffic, you definitely want to keep that as high as possible for PC over IP. It's usually voice IP, then PC over IP first and second. Using not using tail drop, because obviously the word tail drop, it's going to drop those packets. It's not going to retransmit those packets. You're going to get the weird flakiness, maybe even black screen, popular stuff like that. So, don't let your network guys go crazy and make them use, the WRED algorithms for that. MTU sizes, this is important. I got kind of burned on this at one time, making sure that those MTU sizes are correct across all your devices from endpoint through the network. We had a switch that was not compatible with jumbo frames. Everything else was set to jumbo frames, and the switch was like, I don't know what to do, and still had some issues. And of course, you look at the switch last, we're looking at everything else to start with. So make sure you pay attention to those things there. PC over IP can be very adjusted through GPO, but it's one of those things that you want to make sure that you do a little bit at each time, maybe tweak a little bit, see how it is, set up a test pool or some test desktops for that. Maximum session bandwidth, you can change those things and adjust a little bit. These are recommendations from VMware on basics. Small sizes for standard, 2 meg, and 3 to 5 meg on 3D desktops, maybe for AutoCAD, those sort of things. Session bandwidth, I think 50 is a little low in my opinion. In the 100, 150 range, I think is good for the audio. And call centers I've worked with before, it's like, okay, why are you using audio anyway? So we kind of turned it down or disable those things. So it's kind of sounds like a tin can anyway. Sometimes they're trying to listen to Pandora. I'm like, seriously? So disable build to lossless. This feature, it should be, and I haven't verified this, it should be turned off as a default in version 6 and version 5. This was not turned off, and that's where it's building your every single picture to the best quality so that it's, giving more latency, more bandwidth. You want to constrain those things from happening for the user session.
Disable is disabled.
Yeah, disable means, yeah, build, it's almost backwards. I believe that's a test question too. Frame rates, 30 frames per second or lower. It can be reduced to help the bandwidth. Be cautious on that one. Actually, be cautious on all these. Like I said before, just kind of don't throw caution into the wind and be like, oh, change all these things. Now everything's great. And they're like, I can't see the X-ray of that guy's body. No. So, client-side caching. If your endpoint is compatible with that, that's a good session or a good setting to change. I think the default is 250 megs. It'll cache some stuff on the client side, so it's not passing across the wire as much. And definitely review the Horizon PC over IP optimization guide. All the stuff that I'm talking about is in there, and they'll go through a little bit more than what's on the screen here. So yeah, so a couple more. So I'll run these through real quick here. Okay. Gold or your master images, definitely follow the optimization guide. It's a nice PDF from VMware. You can Google it real quick and find it. It's got a cool feature that I didn't figure out until like the third or fourth time I opened it. It has some embedded pieces of information in there. I forget how you open that in Adobe, but basically when you open it, you'll have 4 scripts that are built into the PDF as text files. You could take those text files, rename them as BAT scripts, and run them, and they'll clean up your desktop, everything from turning off themes and disabling services. You can even tweak it to your own likings and turn some stuff on and off if you want. I went ahead and turned off what I thought was good, then ran the script and it turned off more stuff, so it was nice to kind of make that desktop as lean as possible. Definitely start from clean images. I don't know anyone that does the whole P2V and then uses that image, but that's a crazy idea. So if you think like, I have a really cool desktop that's been working great forever, let me use that. No, don't. That's not a bad. That's a bad idea. Disable the apps that are going to perform the auto updates. I believe those optimization scripts can help with some of those. Some of them obviously creep up on you, Google and Adobe. So turn those things off. Kill those tasks in the task manager. Definitely, if you can afford to, replace your gold images on faster tier storage so they are quickly accessible for cloning. vCPUs, definitely not a good thing to add more. I personally, before I went through my training, I was like, yeah, I know this view stuff. Let's go put 2 vCPUs on everything, right? So I overcommitted the server. I'm like, what's going on with the server? Like everyone's having great performance, and the server was about to die. So be careful with those things. Don't be a Nigel. Network adapters, consider using the newer VMX Net 3 so on a 10 gig scale, a little more adaptable or going forward. And also the agentless software, if you can get into a software solution for antivirus that's agentless. I know Trend, McAfee, Sophos, some of those folks use those at the hypervisor level, so it's protecting it from the vShield endpoint kind of life, right? It's a lot easier, keeps your desktops real lean and thin. So more. I swear this is my last one. So I'm going to throw this up here. So managing zero clients, this goes back to the whole buy-in of desktop support, right? So we want those guys to feel that they're helping out, or we want to give them stuff so I'm not doing it or you're not doing it. Using those vendor-supplied consoles to manage your WIS endpoints or HP endpoints, that's a godsend instead of going around with USB and trying to change all the settings every day. Delegate your administration for different tasks for pools by using groups within View. The same for the admin groups that come with your View administrator. There's some great groups that are built in there. And I had even given some to my boss and said, hey, you can do 3 things for me when I'm on vacation, but you're not allowed to reboot the server. You're not allowed to do anything else. Don't break my stuff till I come back. Those groups are nice. You can clone them, you can tweak them a little bit, and then set them up for your desktop guys, your help desk guys, upper management, or even if you guys ever get to take a vacation, it's helpful for that too. Remote management sessions. This is probably my favorite one because I worked for a company that didn't have a lot of money. We were in oil and gas, so we were activating enable the PC over IP session to be seen from the console. So if you're familiar with View, when you're looking at a desktop, same as you would with a server, there's a console. You can pop open a console. When the user's connected, the screen's blank. It's a security feature built into the View 5, I believe in 6 as well. You can flip that in a group policy and turn that on. So we didn't have to install TeamViewer or go to PC or anything on those desktops. We're just able to give the admin or the desktop person access to the vSphere client because we had a group for them. They weren't going to hurt themselves or hurt my stuff, and they could also see the screen and shadow the user. So you do one of those things like, hey, 1 second, I'm going to connect to your desktop, and you're already looking at it, and you just don't touch the mouse for a second. Okay, good, I'm connected. So they don't think that you're spying on them because you really could flip in there and see what they're Googling all day long. So. The PC over IP log viewer been helpful for troubleshooting issues. I believe it's a Java app that you install on your machine. It can pull it. You pull in your logs. It'll pull up some nice charts to show you what's going on with the PC over IP, and that's helpful when you're tweaking those Active Directory policies. And then printers. We all like printers, right? Location-based printing, it's been pretty good in my opinion for what I've deployed it for. Location-based printing is where you can set the device to follow wherever printers are. So say if you're working with a hospital or a school and you're on floor 1, it notices that I'm on floor 1 by either the group that I'm in or the IP subnet that I'm connected to, and it says I'm going to print to the printer in the hallway. If I'm the doctor and I got to print downstairs in ER, but I got to go upstairs and see maternity, or I got to go see another person on another floor, that location-based printing is already set by group policy to say when that doctor connects to this subnet, he only gets access to the printer at the nurse's station. So you can move around and your printers will follow you, so you're not always printing on one floor and having to find where your print jobs are. I did write a blog post for VMware's SMB blog, but I found out this week that VMware took down their SMB blog for some reason. So on that. And the blog was posted last year, ironically, on April Fool's Day. So maybe the joke was on me. I don't know. Now the blog's gone. So sorry I can't share that with you, but that's my claim to fame. So I did that. And automation, I think Matt's going to talk a little bit about automation here, but if you have any interest like Kyle just had in his last session, Power CLI is going to be your friend moving forward.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that I missed Kyle's session. And I know that we've actually got a couple of Power CLI fanboys, I should say, in the room here. Sean Massey and Kyle already in the back. They've done some really good work with it. And then vRealize Orchestrator also has some automation capabilities and orchestration capabilities, but I think if I remember, it's in the enterprise version of Horizon. But if you have the enterprise version of Horizon, go for it.
And if you have the enterprise version of Horizon, what else do you get?
Well, you get vSAN for advanced for free, and then you get F volumes UEM.
And VROPS.
VROPS for Horizon, which Jared Cuniff just had a session over here, I think, on that earlier today. I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to go see that. Here are some locations, just a couple I picked off the internet in my spare time in the last day or so, which I've had none. So Michael Adrick and Barry Coombs have some information out there, Sean and Kyle as well, Jason Pierce. So these presentations are going to be online in the workspace if you guys want them.
I want to say about that, even simple things like Kyle was showing, just like simple one-liner things. I'm a one-liner Power CLI guy right now. I have one script, I think it's like 4 lines, and the 4 lines are because I wanted to see how it changed colors, see how I put a message up on the screen, and did a couple things. But those little one-liners are God save, right? So you can change little settings just really quickly without jumping in the GUI. Sure, it's nice to make sure that it's actually doing what you want it to do, right? And testing it in your lab. But they're definitely helpful, quick, especially on the fly, like the rebooting and turning things off or doing some tweaks with the VMware tools. I've used a couple one-liners to change NIC cards and flip cards back and forth like that, and just amazed myself that I'm like, well, I did that already. Now I can go get another coffee or something. So.
Okay, finding passion, the last item here. It looks like we're right on the clock, so I'll just run through this really quick. So how many C-types of managers are in here? I don't know if there's very many of them, but Anyway, I was thinking we might get a couple from this session. Guess not. Anyway, so when you're interviewing people, look for people that love disruption and change. And it's something that a lot of people may not necessarily look for, but in our industry, it's constant. And if you can find someone that loves change, that's somebody you should look for. Considers research to be leisure. The type of people that go home and love looking at new technologies, build out a home lab. Those are something that it's not necessarily a dime a dozen, but it's a lot of fun. How many home lab users do we have in here? See, that's pretty cool. We got quite a few people that have home labs.
How many of those home lab users are married? Just checking now.
Yeah.
Make sure you balance that with your family, work-life balance there too, electric bill, all those things. So.
Kids are great helpers for pulling cables.
Yes, kids are great helpers in small spaces. Yeah, and I have a colleague of mine at work that says, and what are you doing between 2 and 5 in the morning anyway, right? So, okay. VMUG meetings, encourage VMUG meetings. You guys are all at a VMUG meeting, so, absolutely. Blogging. I know that there's several people out here that are bloggers. Blogging's difficult. Nigel has a pretty good blog, top 75 blogger, I think, according to Eric Siebert's site, I think. I don't know about Kyle. I think you're on the list. You're not on the list? Yeah, you're too busy, aren't you? Sean's on the list.
I don't know
the
how
virtual.
I got there.
I think that could be a problem.com, thevirtualhorizon.com, NigelHickey.com, VMAT.net, but I haven't done anything in a long time.
And I've heard some stories of the blogging and getting in the way of work. And I'm not going to say quit your job if you're a blogger and tell your boss to let you blog, but I've heard of some folks, and that's where we're hoping we had some C-levels in here to kind of educate them a little bit. But I've seen people say, well, you're blogging about this stuff, and we don't want you talking about that, or we don't want you on a podcast with that guy from this company because we don't deal with that company. So those are the things that I wish and hope and pray that those things can change, right, and go forward, right? Because I worked at a place before consulting, and I was there for 4 years. My boss enabled me to do those things: go to training, go blog, go to conferences, go to VMUGs, and get the education. And I made that place a better place, and I left. But I left after 4 years. I didn't say, oh, yeah, I could do all this stuff, and then I bounced after 6 months, So the whole C-level is like, oh, if we hold you down, you're going to stay with us forever. But don't let that be what stops you from blogging. Even if it's a Saturday or you have some downtime with family, or you're in a hotel room, in between work. So I think it's a good activity. It's a good thing to get out there, as well as don't be afraid that no one is going to understand or even read your blog. Because at first, no one read my blog. No one gave a crap of who I was, and I probably still don't. But at the same time, you have that fear of like, am I saying something that's got value, or does 700 people already know this answer? You'll be surprised. You'll put a blog out there, and that one person says, "Oh my God, that helped me do something," or one piece of it, that makes you write another blog. And I've done the same when I go to VMworld. I get a little fanboyish and say like, "Hey, I read that blog and it really helped me fix something at work," And that person sure might have 200 more readers than you, but it helps them too. They're like, okay, it's actually getting somewhere. So I'm trying to encourage, keep going with that stuff.
When something breaks and you fix it, blog it.
Yeah,
that's my thing, because you always want. I can go back to my blog and see how I did that the next time. Yep. That's something that I try to do a lot. Yeah. And you're already documenting it, right? Your fix. So you document it in your blog, and that makes things a lot easier to do blogs. So apparently nothing's breaking where we're at because I'm not blogging. Just kidding.
Or
right.
Or
too much is breaking out of time. Exactly.
It's just in
fire.
Match.
Oh, and the last thing is message to CIOs on YouTube, right? Eventually. Train your IT staff so that they can leave. Treat them so they don't want to leave. That actually came from our CIO. It's a great message. And it works. It really works.
You're still here.
Yeah. I'll be here forever. Questions. I know we're a little bit over, but if anybody has a question. Anybody? Cool.
Make sure you follow Minnesota VMUG on Twitter. Follow Matt and I on Twitter.
Houston VMUG on Twitter.
Yep.
South Dakota VMUG on Twitter. Indy VMUG on Twitter.
If you want to show up the Houston VMUG.
Wisconsin VMUG on Twitter. North Central Wisconsin VMUG on Twitter.
Just follow VMUG.
Yeah.
My VMUG. Yeah, exactly. Well, great, guys.
Thanks, guys.
So no further questions, Your Honor. I move for recess.